Hi, I'm Karen Montgomery, and this is the quick trim and circle ruler that I designed for Creative Grid. The ruler is a 3.5 by 12.5 inch ruler, and it does everything a 3.5 by 12.5 inch ruler should do. What I've done is added these 45-degree angle lines to the ruler that cross right at the 1/4 inch line, and that's the magic part that's built into the ruler. Your ruler may look like this. It has the exact same lines on it and will do everything that we're going to talk about today. In addition, what we've done is added the MS tag to the ruler. If you have a smartphone, you can download an app and scan this in, and the video that we're watching today will pop up every time you use the ruler. If you don't have a smartphone, you can log on to the Creative Grid's website and watch this video as many times as necessary. The quick trim and circle ruler was designed so that when you're making a block with a 45-degree angle seam, such as a flying geese block, you never have to draw another line again. Normally, what you're instructed to do is take your rectangle, place your square on the corner like this, line up your edges, and use a pencil or a marking device to draw a line on every single one of them. You're then instructed to go to your sewing machine and sew, come back and pre-trim the corners. What you want to do with the ruler instead, you can eliminate the marking by turning the ruler on a 45-degree angle like this and lining up the 45-degree lines across the top of the rectangle and down the side of the square. When the ruler is lined up properly, the dotted line, which is in black on the ruler, will go from point to point on the square. And when you have checked all 3 positioning points, you can take your rotary cutter and trim. I'm now ready to go to my sewing machine and stitch using the exact same seam guide that I use for every other seam in the quilt. My 1/4 inch is built right in. After it's been stitched, I'm going to press the seam open as I normally would and go on and continue to do the next side. The quick trim ruler will work for every 45-degree angle seam that you have in every book and pattern that you already own. You don't need a special book or pattern to use the ruler. If you see the instructions that say draw a line and stitch directly on the line, you simply trim before sewing. I can use the ruler to do a snowball block to clip a corner, as I've done for the center of our featured block, by positioning the ruler like this. One of the 45-degree lines goes across the top, one goes down the side. The dotted line on the ruler will always go from point to point so that you have 3 checkpoints to make sure that you're positioned correctly. If you've noticed, I never have to look for the correct lines on the ruler, and the reason for that is because they're on both sides. When you pick the ruler up, use the one that's on the top. It works both right and left-handed. All I have to do now is trim, remove my corner, and I'm ready to sew. One of everyone's favorite uses for the quick trim and circle ruler is to join your binding strips together. When you join your binding, you use a 45-degree angle seam and you lay one position this way, one position this way, and there's a mystery seam in there somewhere that has to be stitched. If you pre-trim your strips, it's much easier to do. I'm going to line up any one of the lines on the ruler along the side of my strips and trim off the salvaged edges. Once those are gone, I have a perfect 90-degree corner, and I'm going to turn my ruler and use the exact same 45-degree lines that we've been using. The one long line will go along the side of my strip, and the small notch that's created by where the lines intersect will sit right across the top of my fabric strip. Now I'm going to trim my corner so that I have a perfect angle. When you align your strips, you'll put your first one down like this, and your second one will align perfectly on top of it. Your dog ears have been pre-trimmed, and you're going to stitch from this corner to this corner. When you open them up, they'll be perfect every single time, just like this. You can also use your quick trim and circle ruler to set in seams and do Y seams, as are illustrated in the attic windows block. The first thing that I'm going to do is cut my pieces exactly the same size as your pattern. If you don't have a pattern for the attic windows, it's just a simple math equation. If this is a 6-inch finished block, I would cut it 6.5 inches. This is a 2-inch strip that I'm adding to the side of it, so it would be cut 2.5 inches wide. 6 and 2 are 8, so my strip is 8.5 inches long. The first thing I want to do is pre-trim my corners, so I'm going to line up the 45-degree line along the side and put the top of my rectangle into the notch that's created by where they cross. I'm going to trim the corner, and I'm ready to stitch it to my block. This piece goes along the bottom, So I'll line it up like this. And as you all know, when you do a set-in seam, like a Y seam, you can't stitch the entire way off. By pre-trimming the corner, I can see the little tiny dog ear that happens right here, so I can position my ruler and mark exactly where I need to stop. Once that's been stitched in place, it will look like this. This will be pressed open, and I'm ready to add my lighter blue side. When the light blue side has been added, normally I would have two rectangles here and a mystery seam that I have to establish. Instead, by pre-trimming them, we simply fold the block in half on a 45-degree angle, match up the raw edges, and as you can see, they fit together perfectly. Use the same seam allowance that I've always used to stitch from here to here, and your miter's complete. When you join your blocks together, you'll have mitered corners that look like this that are perfect every single time. The reason that we refer to this as the Quick Tremont circle ruler is because it's also capable of drawing circles. There have been holes drilled down the center of the ruler, and those holes are there so that you can use it to put a pin and a pencil and draw a circle. In order to draw the circle, we're going to flip the ruler upside down because the Creative Grids brand is known for their non-skid surface. And to draw the circle, we want the ruler to move, so we want that non-slip on the top. I can pick any hole in the ruler, put a simple pin in the middle of it. I'm working on a pressing surface. If you're working on your rotary cutting mat, you have to hold your pin in place. Or you can work on a piece of firm cardboard that would hold your pin. To draw a circle, if I wanted an 8-inch circle, I can count 4 spaces away, because 4 is half of 8. Insert my pin in here and draw. If I wanted a larger circle, I can draw up to a 22-inch circle by putting my pin in this end and my pen 11 inches away, and it will draw a much larger circle for me. To use this for a project, the quilt behind me is Old Dog New Tricks. And what I've done is I've constructed my blocks, and they were square. Once they were finished being constructed, I put a piece of fusible interfacing over top of the block. I fold my block and finger press to find the center and mark it with my pen. Take my ruler, place it on top, put the pin in the center, and those are 8-inch blocks, so I will count 4 blocks away, put my pen in there, and draw the circle. Once the circle's been drawn, I can remove my ruler, and I simply go to my sewing machine and stitch directly on the line. When I've stitched on the line, you can see that I don't have to worry about my seam allowance, stitching a 1/4 inch inside or outside, just sew directly on the line. Then I cut it out with pinking shears. The reason I use pinking shears is because it allows me to clip my corners while I trim my circle. Then it's simply as easy as turning it over, slitting the interfacing, and turning the block right side out. Once this block has been fused onto the background, as you can see out here, then you can either hand or machine stitch around the outside edge. Once that's been stitched, you can trim away the background fabric and the interfacing layer will be gone.